This is the alignment most people have been waiting for, and it's happening right now. There's a Mars-Neptune conjunction taking place, and it's affecting you more than you think. Because the sooner you become aware that something is happening today, the better positioned you are while it's unfolding. This isn't something you come back to later and figure out. This is happening in real time, and if you're tapped in while it's happening, there's something you can actually get out of it. But if you treat today like it doesn't matter, you move through it the same way everyone else does, and you miss what was right in front of you the whole time. There are two completely different ways this day plays out, and most people won't even realize which one they're in, because nothing dramatic needs to happen for things to quietly go wrong. That's what makes today different. If you tap into this early, you start noticing small inconsistencies, things that don't fully add up, decisions that feel right on the surface, but something about them doesn't sit properly, and catching that early changes everything. Because once you see the distortion before it fully settles in, you're no longer being pulled by it, you're watching it. But if you don't catch it early, you move with it. You follow through on things that feel certain in the moment, only to realize later they were never stable to begin with. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. There's one very specific signal today that tells you exactly which side you're on. And if you miss it, you won't notice until it's already played out. There's one signal today that matters more than anything else, and it's so subtle that most people will ignore it without even realizing they had the chance to catch it. It's that exact moment where you're about to do something you've already decided on, and then right before you act, you hesitate for no clear reason. You are about to reply, about to agree, about to send something, about to follow through. And for a split second, something in you pauses, not long enough to fully question it, just enough to feel slightly off. That pause is not random. That is the signal. Because what's happening today is a very specific mix. Mars is pushing you to act immediately, to move forward without delay, while Neptune is quietly interfering with clarity in ways that aren't obvious. And that hesitation you feel for a split second, that's exactly where those two forces collide. It's not doubt, it's not fear, it's not overthinking, it's interruption. Something in you is catching a detail your mind hasn't fully processed yet. And this is where most people lose the advantage. Because that pause feels small, almost irrelevant, they override it instantly and continue anyway. They send the message, they say yes, they follow through, and everything feels normal in the moment. But later, that's where the realization hits. They move too quickly through something that wasn't fully clear. Today, that split second matters more than usual. Now here's where this takes a turn that most people never see coming. Not everything that feels off today is a problem. Some of it is actually working in your favor, but it doesn't look like it at first. Because one of the most overlooked things about this kind of moment is that what feels like a disruption can actually be a redirection happening in real time. Plans might shift. Something you expected to go through suddenly doesn't. A conversation doesn't happen the way you thought it would. Something delays, cancels, or just doesn't land properly. And the instinct most people have is to see that as something going wrong. But today, that's not always the case. Sometimes what doesn't work out immediately is the only thing preventing something worse from locking in. That's the part people miss. Because while they're focused on what didn't go their way, they completely overlook what they just avoided. And this is where being aware changes everything. If you've been paying attention, if you've already caught that signal from earlier, you're not reacting the same way. You're not rushing to fix it or force it back into place. You're watching it. And when you watch it, you start to notice something strange. What initially looked like a setback starts revealing a different direction that actually makes more sense, not in an obvious, dramatic way. In a quiet, almost subtle way that only becomes clear if you don't rush past it. This is one of those rare moments where things don't always go according to plan, but that's exactly what makes it work in your favor, because instead of pushing something unstable forward, you're being redirected without having to force anything. And now, it's time for today's comment of the day. The past will feel like a completely different lifetime compared to what will happen next. After being reborn countless times into who you are now, the worst is completely behind you, and only the best is now ahead of you. There's something hopeful about this kind of perspective, not because it promises perfection, but because it recognizes how much someone can change over time. The idea that you're not the same person who went through those past situations, that alone can shift how you see everything ahead. And sometimes growth really does feel like that, like you've lived multiple versions of yourself, and you're finally stepping into one that fits. It doesn't erase the past, but it can make it feel distant. Thank you for sharing this. What makes this moment different isn't just the alignment itself, it's the timing of it. This isn't something that lingers for weeks where you can casually come back to it later. There's a very specific 48-hour window here across April 13th and 14th where everything you do carries a different kind of weight. And it's not obvious when you're in it, but the momentum behind your actions is not the same as it was yesterday, and it won't be the same a few days from now. This is one of those rare windows where small actions don't stay small. A decision made today doesn't just stay a decision. A conversation started now doesn't just sit there. It moves, it builds, it creates a chain reaction that feels almost disproportionate compared to the effort it took. Timing doesn't change what you do, it changes what it becomes. That's the part people overlook. They wait for perfect conditions, or they assume they can always act later with the same result. But that's not how this works. There are moments where things land differently, where they take root faster, where they connect in ways that feel almost effortless. This is one of those moments. Think about it like this. There's a difference between planting something in dry ground and planting something in soil that's already ready to receive it. The same action produces a completely different outcome, not because you did something better, but because you did it at the right time. And right now, the ground is ready. This doesn't mean rushing into anything blindly. That's not the point. The point is recognizing that if there's something you've been holding back on, something small but meaningful, something you've been thinking about doing but haven't acted on yet, this is the window where it carries more impact than usual. It could be as simple as saying something you've been keeping to yourself, reaching out to someone, starting something you've been delaying, making a move you've been overthinking. And what makes this even more powerful is that it doesn't require perfection. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need full clarity. In fact, waiting for that is exactly how people miss windows like this. Because while they're waiting to feel completely certain, the moment where action actually matters passes quietly. Now, when people hear something like this, they immediately assume the cost of ignoring it is something dramatic, like something will go wrong, something will fall apart, something will be taken from them. But that's not how this works. Nothing obvious is taken from you today. There's no immediate consequence, no instant regret, no moment where you realize you made a mistake right away. That's why it's so easy to overlook. Because what's actually being offered today is something much quieter and much more valuable. It's precision. Most days, you act first, and then you learn later whether it was the right move or not. You say something, you decide something, you follow through on something, and only after the fact do you fully understand what you stepped into. But today flips that. Today gives you the rare chance to see before you act. And that changes everything. Because when you bring Mars and Neptune together, you get something very unusual. Mars wants movement, it wants action, it wants you to go forward without hesitation. Neptune, on the other hand, doesn't give you clean answers. It blurs things, it softens edges, it makes things feel unclear. But when those two meet, something unexpected happens. That hesitation we talked about earlier, that moment where you pause for no clear reason, that becomes a point of awareness. Not confusion, not delay, awareness. Hesitation, when it comes at the right moment, is not holding you back, it's showing you what you would have missed. And this is where the real value is. Because instead of learning through consequences, you're given the chance to catch things early. You start noticing what doesn't fully align before you commit to it. You sense when something isn't fully stable before you lock it in. You recognize when the timing isn't right before you push forward anyway. And that's rare. Most people don't get that kind of clarity until after they've already made the move. So ignoring today doesn't create immediate problems. You'll still move forward, things will still happen, life will still go on the same way it always does. But what you miss is the chance to adjust without cost. Because if you don't catch those small signals now, you'll catch them later, but through experience, through mistakes, through things that could have been avoided if you had seen them earlier. There's another subtle shift happening today that almost nobody recognizes in real time, and it shows up in a way that feels completely harmless at first. You might feel a sudden urge to tell someone what you're about to do, not because you need advice, not because you're unsure, but just because it feels natural to say it out loud. You want to share the plan, mention the idea, talk about what you're about to start or move toward. And the feeling behind it is usually positive. It feels exciting. It feels real. Saying it out loud almost makes it feel more official, like it's finally happening. But today, that instinct doesn't work the same way, because the moment you speak it too early, something about it changes. When Mars is involved, there's a push to express, to act, to move outward. But Neptune doesn't just sit there quietly. It distorts how things are received once they leave you. So the second you put something out there, it's no longer just yours. It passes through other people's interpretations, their reactions, their doubts, their projections. And even if they don't say anything negative, even if they seem supportive, something subtle shifts. The clarity you had when it was just in your mind starts to lose its edge. Not everything grows stronger when it's shared. Some things weaken the moment they're exposed too soon. That's what makes this tricky, because it doesn't feel like you're doing anything wrong. It feels natural. It feels like connection. But what you're actually doing is letting something unfinished become influenced before it has the structure to hold itself. And today, that influence hits differently. You might notice that once you say it out loud, the energy behind it changes. The excitement fades slightly. The certainty isn't as sharp, or suddenly you start second-guessing something you were completely clear on just moments before. That's not random. That's what happens when something gets filtered before it's ready. There's a reason why some ideas feel powerful when they're still forming, but start to feel weaker once they're talked about too early. It's not that the idea changed, it's that it got exposed before it had the strength to stay intact. And today, more than usual, that matters. Because the same alignment that helps you see can also blur things the moment they leave your control. There's something deeper happening beneath all of this. And for a lot of people, this is the part that's going to hit the hardest, because this isn't just about decisions, timing, or small signals. This is about something that's been draining your energy for a long time without you even realizing how much it's been taking from you. That constant back and forth in your mind. The part of you that wants something and the part of you that immediately questions it. The moment you feel ready to move forward, something pulls you back, not enough to stop you completely, but just enough to keep you stuck in place. That cycle has probably been running for months, and over time, it becomes exhausting. Not because anything dramatic is happening, but because nothing fully moves. You stay in this middle space where you're thinking, considering, going back and forth, but never fully committing in one direction. That's the real drain. Indecision doesn't just delay your life, it quietly drains your energy without giving anything back. And this is where today shifts something. Because Mars represents that forward movement, that push to act, that drive to choose and go. Neptune, on the other hand, has been the part that softens things, blurs things, makes you question what you feel. But when those two collide like this, they don't just sit in tension, they force a resolution. That internal war you've been dealing with doesn't get to stay in that endless loop anymore. It reaches a point where you either move forward with clarity or you feel the weight of staying stuck more than ever before. And for a lot of people, that pressure becomes the turning point, because suddenly, staying in that back and forth feels heavier than just choosing. And the moment you choose, really choose, without immediately pulling yourself back, the shift is immediate. Not because everything in your life changes instantly, but because that internal resistance drops. There's a very specific shift happening today that goes deeper than decisions or timing, and it directly affects what you actually want out of your life. Aries is not passive energy. It's about identity, beginnings, and moving towards something that feels like it belongs to you. So when Mars and Neptune come together in this space, ambition itself starts to change in a way that's hard to ignore once you notice it. For a long time, a lot of what people have been chasing hasn't really been theirs. It's been shaped by expectations, by what looks good on the outside, by what feels safe, or by what they thought they were supposed to want. Today has a way of exposing that quietly. You might look at certain goals or paths you've been committed to and realize they don't hold the same weight anymore. Not because they're bad, but because they were never fully aligned to begin with. At the same time, something else becomes clearer. Not louder, not more dramatic, just more real. It doesn't need to be explained or justified, and it doesn't rely on validation to feel important. Real ambition doesn't ask for permission. It becomes obvious when everything false loses its appeal. That's the shift. There's one thing Neptune quietly takes from people on days like this, and it's not obvious when it's happening. It doesn't remove your opportunities or stop you from moving forward. Instead, it interferes with your clarity of intention in a way that feels almost invisible. You might find yourself thinking more than usual, going back over things, reconsidering decisions you already made, or replaying conversations that should have already been settled. On the surface, it feels like you're being careful and thoughtful, like you're making sure everything is right before you move forward. But if you step back and look at it honestly, nothing is actually progressing. You're staying active mentally, but not moving in any clear direction. Confusion doesn't block your path. It keeps you walking in circles until you forget where you were going. That's how this plays out in real life. It's not dramatic. It's the loop of maybe I should, but maybe I shouldn't, that never fully resolves. It's the planning that keeps expanding without turning into action. It's the feeling of being busy with something, while nothing concrete is actually being done. Mars is still there, pushing for movement, but Neptune softens that push just enough to keep you questioning everything. So instead of moving forward, you stay in this in-between space where nothing fully locks in. The way out of that isn't force, and it's not about trying to overpower the hesitation. It's much simpler than that. It's choosing something small and making it real. One clear decision, one concrete action that moves you out of thinking and into doing. And if you're still here, still watching, I genuinely appreciate you. And if even a small part of this made you pause, think, or see something differently, then you're already ahead of where you were before. Take that with you. You don't need to rush anything from here. You don't need to force decisions or chase clarity. Just move with a bit more awareness than you had yesterday, and trust that the right things will start to stand out without you having to search for them. Some days aren't about doing more, they're about seeing better. And if you hold on to that even slightly, you'll start noticing that things fall into place in ways that don't need to be forced. So whatever you do next, move forward, knowing you didn't miss this moment. You caught it.